here's our agenda. So I wanted to put together some key points. We're going to do welcome and introductions. We're going to set some goals and intentions for the meeting to try to keep me on track so that I don't start wandering. We're going to talk about some ground rules for our meeting, and I'm going to give you a little history and background to the plan and why we did the things that we did, explain the current plan that we have, and then we do want to hear questions and get feedback from the community. I'm not here just to tell you what we're doing and to say, this is it, there's no feedback, I don't care what you have to say, because I do. Chris, one of our board members, and Carl are both here to help take notes so that we can gather this feedback and really take it and work on it. So, first of all, welcome. My name's Emily Gentry. I forgot to introduce myself at the very beginning. So I'm the president and CEO for Mount Sequoyah. And we have a couple of staff members that are here and around that are helping. So Rebecca Lyles, I think, is popping her head through. Rebecca is our VP and COO, so she works with all of our housekeeping and maintenance staff. And then Melissa Caffrey is here with our director of camp and programs. So she's running around with the kids in the pool and any programs that we're actively doing here at Mount Sequoyah. We also have a couple of board members in the room. So Chris Baribeau and Carl Pernodal are over here, and I don't think I have any other board members in the room, although we had a board meeting on Monday, so they are very much involved with what's going on. We had one come to a meeting on Monday, so they are very much wanting to be involved and to hear exactly what is said here. So our goals for today's meeting are to explain the proposed PZD, to answer your questions. We do want to foster that open dialogue and to find some common ground with where we need to be on this proposal to ultimately make it for the betterment of Mount Sequoyah, because that is what we want. We want Mount Sequoyah, our wonderful, beloved nonprofit that is celebrating our 100th anniversary this year, to continue in the best way and the most sustainable way that we can for the future. So some of our ground rules. I just want to make sure that we set these. Sometimes I roll my eyes at these at other meetings, and here I am presenting some. But I do want to make sure that we're having a respectful and productive atmosphere for our meetings. So we want to encourage active listening. That's both from you all and from myself and our board members. Again, I don't want to just talk at you. I want to hear what you have to say, to listen to all that feedback that you have. I'd like to foster a community of respectful disagreement. So if you disagree with what we have done, please let me know that, but just do it in a respectful way so that we can have some constructive feedback as well. So instead of just saying, I don't like it, I don't want to see that, say why you don't like it and what you would like to see instead. That would really help us, again, get the most clear and concise things that we can from this meeting. And then please raise your hand and wait for others to have a chance to speak to avoid interrupting other people. So I will, just to save us some time, try to call on people and then repeat your question so everyone can hear it. That way we're not having to pass around the microphone and do that, run around like that. Does that all sound okay?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so one of the big questions that I've gotten over the last 10 years that I've been here is who owns Mount Sequoyah? That's changed over the last 10 years, but Mount Sequoyah is a nonprofit corporation. As a nonprofit, we have no owners. There are no shareholders. No one's getting kickbacks for being on the board based on the profit. And so we don't declare shares of stock. Government responsibilities are vested in the board of directors or trustees. So these folks are who are responsible for making sure that it is run in a fair, equitable way and legally. They're the ones that are making sure that we are doing the things that we are supposed to be doing. And a nonprofit corporation is formed to carry out non-commercial purpose, whether that be religious, educational, charitable, scientific, or other qualifying purposes. There are ways to do unrelated business income. So if I'm accepting something that is unrelated to our mission as a nonprofit, we can still do that, but there are tax implications for that. Just because we are a nonprofit doesn't mean that we don't have to pay taxes. It's just lined out the way that it is supposed to be lined out. We still pay employment taxes, for example. So I wanted to cover some of those things. What happens if Mount Sequoyah is sold? I think this is the biggest question that no one wants to ask, but I think it's important to address. Mount Sequoyah has been here for 100 years. Mount Sequoyah needs financial support and needs financial stability to continue on in the next 100 years. But based on limited research that I've done, and I've checked with the attorney that we have on the board, a nonprofit cannot be sold. because without an ownership mechanism, it's not possible. If a charitable nonprofit winds down operations, the board of directors must distribute all of the nonprofit's assets to another 501c3 after all debts have been settled. I got this directly from a website called the Foundation Group that talks a lot about nonprofits. And then I think that the after all debts have been settled is the concerning portion for those asking this question. And that's what we want to prevent having to have happen, is we don't want to have to settle debts and leave Mount Sequoyah out to dry. That being said, the reason I moved to this next is our Methodist ties. We were founded by the Methodist Church in 1922, and in 2016, the Methodist Church transferred ownership to the board of directors to become an independent 501c3 nonprofit, directly because of this legislation, I believe. That's why they did what they did. They wanted to divest themselves of the expense of running and owning Mount Sequoyah and get rid of the liability. They could not sell the property in a legal manner, and so they transferred the ownership to Mount Sequoyah as it is now. The Methodist Church was contributing about $160,000 per year. That's why they wanted to get rid of us, and they also had the liability of owning something like Mount Sequoyah, which is substantial. And then there is an agreement tied to this arrangement that if Mount Sequoyah makes a profit, excluding donations, because donations must stay with, that we have to respect the donor's wishes. We can't split donations with someone without telling donors, and we would never do that. Or if we sell physical property, the Methodist Church is entitled to 50% of those funds until the year 2031. So, a little bit about the current work of Mount Sequoyah. I'm not going to read through every single piece on this slide, just in the interest of time, because I do want to make sure there's time for feedback. But we do contribute to this community. We see ourselves as part of this community. We've done 6 pieces of outdoor public arts. Deer Half Deer is one of the ones just outside this window that's brand new. We're working to develop plans for walking trails. We allow community members and we encourage community members to walk the grounds, just like they would at a community park. We're not a community park. We're not public property. We are a private entity, but we want people to be able to come and use the grounds, walk the grounds, and enjoy them, because that is part of who we are. And so we want to continue pursuing that as well. Again, you can see a lot of the program that we're doing. We do hospitality, recreation programming for both kids and adults, anything from fitness to camps to arts. And we really have spent some time working with our city and community to try to work on traffic calming measures, because a lot of people do come up here. I would say we're not perfect yet, and we still want to pursue that work, and we still do want to continue working with the city to calm traffic and to slow traffic and to get it inside here so they're not driving past private homes around Skyline Drive. We did recently remove parking from the overlook in an effort to work on some of this traffic calming measures, to work on pedestrian friendly areas of campus, and it is our hope that we can continue to do that. Just a couple of financial notes for you. Again, I'm not going to cover every single bullet point here, but please read them while I'm going through. In 2022, we received $330,000 in grants. That's anything from the Walmart organization to something at the state level, and these are almost all for specific programs, not general operations. About 40% of our non-grant income came from outside groups. That's people coming in to do weddings. That's people renting space to do events. And then about 20% of our non-grant income came from long-term renters. That is anything from our artists who are renting to Clubhouse Fitness, who is up here. That is just, again, showing you where the sources of income are coming from and why it's important to include those in our future zoning plans. $225,000 in utility expenses. That is going up substantially this year, because not because of usage, but because of just the cost. I don't know if anyone else has noticed their utility bill increasing. It's not because you're using more, it is because it's costing more. We had $96,000 in contributions. That's from individuals, not grants, not foundations. That is the contributions that we are receiving. And so you can see that is a relatively small number in comparison to these other things. This is one of our big goals for 2023, is to grow this number. Again, to help with the financial stability of Mount Sequoyah. Our overall operating actuals last year were $1.5 million. So that gives you an idea of what it takes to run and operate a facility like Mount Sequoyah. That $103,000 depreciation expense is also substantial. That is those assets on campus that are old and depreciating year after year. The staff that run this place, we currently have 13 full-time staff members. Some of the tenure of our staff members, I've been here for 10 years. I love working here. I love working for Mount Sequoyah. I want to see this place grow. I think Rebecca has been here, 6 years, 7 years? 6 years in May. We have a housekeeping staff member who is celebrating her 20th anniversary this year. Our maintenance director has been here for longer than I have, which is about 12 years, I believe. And we're starting to see more and more people that we're finding and putting in the right place as a staff member stick around because they love what we're doing and they want to see this go on for the future. We have one part-time staff member. We're currently hiring 2 new positions, one of which is a development director who will be working on raising individual donations, that goal I said we have for this year. And then we have 60 seasonal part-time staff for swimming camp. So you can see it jumps up significantly in the summer. All right, open space. This is one of the things that we want to make sure that we are committed to and understand the importance of maintaining the park-like atmosphere up here. Open space is not just tree canopy, it's not green space. It is the open space that we are calculated to be 90% open space. That is anything that's not a building. So that does count parking lots, which I would say are not green space, but they are open space, and they are important for the function of Mount Sequoyah. If people don't have a place to park, that's a problem. And we are currently part of the Hillside Hilltop Overlay District. That is involving tree canopy. There's also landscape regulations with that. And it means we have to maintain a higher percentage of treetop canopy than other entities in the city. Instead of 25%, it is 30%. And I think we're substantially higher than that. We haven't done the full calculations, but we are going to be substantially higher with that 90% open space. Historic preservation. Mount Sequoyah is listed as a historic district on the state and national historic registries. And we're committed to preserving our relevant historic structures. That's Parker Hall, that's Sequoyah Hall. Those are built in the 20s. All of the cottages on Cottage Circle, many of them count towards this. They're contributing buildings in this historic district. We want to maintain that status. This building that you're sitting in is not a contributing factor, but it is an older building. It's just been changed a little bit on the outside, so it doesn't contribute. But we do want to maintain a commitment to that as well. So our existing plan, we've divided the plan into planning areas, but a lot of the planning areas have a lot of the same use units on them because of the way Mount Sequoyah functions. The way that it was built over the last 100 years is that lodging ended up in every single area of campus almost. You've got Cottage Circle over there, but then you have lodging rooms over at the pool. You have culture and arts and culture recreation is in every single planning area because it's essential to what we do. We tried in this existing plan to copy the community services existing zone and to edit some from there. So if you're wondering where in the world did you come up with this, it's the community services zone that we tried to base things off of. Let's see, for example, we are trying to maintain the ability to rent hotel, motel, and amusement services. I think that was concerning to a lot of people. That's simply in there to protect the lodging rooms that we're already renting to people. We want to be able to continue operating in that way because it does bring in income and it is part of what we do as a retreat and conference center. As what we do as Mount Sequoyah, it is essential. We also put the use unit number 46, which is short-term lodging. That is what I think people know of as the Airbnbs around the city. We could just do that, but the city recommended that we do hotel motel because it is a little bit easier to maintain and it's less risky for that to go away in the future. The city's really starting to crack down on Airbnb rentals because they want to help find ways to encourage more affordable housing for community members. And so that's why we didn't want to rely solely on the short-term rentals use unit in our existing plan. Some of the other things that we've done, like the single-family homes, we have staff who live on site. We have host families who live on site. So we wanted to make sure that we're preserving those homes that people live in. We've also applied for things like office space and general business. And those are all based on square footage of what's being offered. We want to be able to continue offering art studios. That's office space is a lot larger of a square footage than some of the art studios would need, but we wanted to make sure that that's over there for Clubhouse Fitness that's renting. We wanted to make sure that they have plenty of square footage to continue operating as they do in that facility, and they're not excluded because of the way we've done the zoning. Some of you may be wondering why we didn't continue to maintain the P1 institution and just add the ability to do a coffee shop. The city said it doesn't work that way. They said you can't just take an existing zone and then say, well, I want to do that and this. I did ask if we could continue to be a P1 institution and still do a coffee shop, and they said no. I said, well, the University of Arkansas is a P1 institution and they offer a coffee shop, and they said, well, they're the university and you're not the university. They get to do what they would like to do and we can't really control them. I also pointed out that Washington Regional is a P1 institution and has coffee and food service, and they said the same thing, but at the county level. And they said that we could try to push through and combat this on a legal end with the city. They said you could do that, but you could only do it for that. And if you had another use unit that you wanted to add in the future, like say for restaurants, then you would have to do the whole process again. So that's why we wanted to go through and do the zoning as we are doing, because we want to do this one time so that we're not constantly saying like, hey, like we're trying to change things again, like everyone get together and give us feedback and then hodgepodging it. We want to have a good plan going forward that protects what we're doing and allows for growth and sustainable growth. So all that to say, Chris or Carl, is there anything that I'm missing that I need to cover in this section? Okay. We have an update on the Planning Commission meeting because I mailed out letters and did not include the date inside the letter. We are moved to April 24th, and I will be mailing another letter out, so you will get another letter that will look very similar. It will just have the April 24th date instead of the April 10th date. So do not show up to City Council on April 10th, or not City Council, the Planning Commission on April 10th, because we will not be on the agenda. I mean, you can show up, but we won't be on the agenda. April 24th is now what we are scheduled to, the agenda we're scheduled to be on if we can hit all of our deadlines. You will also see the signs disappear and then come back. That'll likely be on Friday. That's why we didn't tear down the signs. We're still in the process of doing that. So April 24th, and if that changes, please make sure we have your email so we can communicate those deadlines as they change, if they change. Okay, so I'd like to open it up for questions now. Time? Okay, good. All right, let's see. I saw a hand straight behind Kill. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
My name is Cecil North. I've been 10 years, and I think that a lot of us here have read the proposal and are very, very concerned about it. I have a petition with the signatures of 49 of our neighbors on a proposal to submission of this application that we're going to provide to the planning board. What you say is all well and good, but there's nothing, once this area is rezoned, that all of these uses, basically that charts the course for this hilltop forever. If this zoning proposal is passed, whether it's you or a future owner, will be able to build 5-story hotels, have dance halls, outdoor music establishments, sidewalk cafes, a plethora of things up here. And that's something that I take you at your word. You're not planning to do it, but maybe you're not around forever. Maybe somebody else is out here and has different plans. And once this proposal is passed, and once this area is rezoned, it will be very difficult for any of this group to have any say-so in how things proceed from there. So I really think that you owe it to us in the community to revisit this proposal and trim it back to something that's realistic and doesn't have the potential to permanently harm this area. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Do you have specific items on the list that you would like to see disappear, or that you are most concerned with ruining the atmosphere of Mount Sequoyah?
We understand, thank you, all of them. We understand that actually it is possible to get a variance to have a coffee shop, and that's not exactly accurate. We've talked to people about this ourselves and the legal implications of it, and I think that we would prefer that you pursue that. I don't know how much a coffee shop's going to contribute to your income if this goes going, but it does, as far as I'm concerned, it's okay with me. But the rest of this, no, absolutely not.
We cannot hear.
Okay,
Can you repeat?
yes. So this was, in summary, I'll do my best if they've collected 49 signatures of people who don't like anything that we have put in this plan. They feel that it endangers the sanctity of this space, of the neighborhood, and that the plan as proposed should be struck down and not pursued. We should look at pursuing a variance to the current zoning that we have. I would be interested to see who you talked to, because when I talked to the city, I was told no, and I would love to hear more about who you talked with.
That was just an advisory.
That was just the advisory committee?
No, just an advisory opinion.
Advisory opinion, okay. Let's see, Kevin, yes.
So
Here, I'll hand you the microphone. We'll go ahead and do that.
my question is related to Cecil's comment. Should all of this go through, what guarantees are you able to or prepared to give the community that a board 5 years from now that doesn't have a single person who's currently on it or new ownership does not take all these changes that you have in here and do something entirely different than what your intention is, that we would all be against? What guarantees can you give us if something like this would go through?
Thank you. And I think that we can add restrictions to the proposal. We can look at adding caps on units. I think we can look at adding amendments that would put forth some protections to go along with certain use units. I have not crafted the proposal in that way, but that is possible to write. And I would also state, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but the fact that it is zoned for something does not mean that building permits would be passed, would mean that you still have to go and apply to city sewer, city water. You have to hit all of those different things if you are putting together building plans for said building. So if we were even to renovate an existing building that we have to make sure that we hit all sorts of building codes, which are totally separate. The planning commission was very clear with me, because I had building codes in one of the areas, and they said, we don't control building codes. Building codes are completely separate from this, in addition to construction documents, which is why we sent out when we said we have no plans for development. That is the case. We do not have any sort of construction plans, any sort of site map that says we think we can add this here, we think we can add that here. We have ideas of things we have talked about that we would like the possibility of pursuing, like with the coffee shop. Stu came to us. Stu, thank you for being here tonight. If you have questions about the coffee shop, see him after this. But he came to us with that idea. We said, yes, I think that will fit Mount Sequoyah. I think that will be a great use for that building that is currently sitting underutilized. And we went to the city to then go ahead and get the business permit, and they said, no, you're not zoned for it. And then what will also happen is when they do go to do any sort of renovation with a plumber or with an electrician, they have to file plans with the city that then the city has to approve those as well. And that's a totally separate entity than planning commission. Is that correct?
Well, I would just add to it and say, that if it was anything of substantial size, it has to go through a whole other city process, like large-scale development. But to really answer your question, I think in the projection of 5 years or 10 years, it's a totally different board, or if something ever happened to Mount Sequoyah, the nonprofit, the zoning would still be part of the property. And so the real answer is that it's going to change based on everyone's feedback. Right. We will be making changes.
In a direction we don't like.
No, I'm saying the changes to the proposal, we're going to change the proposal.
From this meeting, we are going to change the proposal, listening to the feedback that you have. So
Yeah.
putting in restrictions, making sure that there are caps for open space, making sure that there are percentages based on the current calculation so that things have to be maintained according to how we are. So, sorry, that's what I'm trying. Yes, we're trying to listen and hear what you have to say so that we can put that into the plan so it is protected for future years, so that whether I'm the director, whether Chris is on the board, whatever that case may be, we want to put that in place. Yes, sir.
I think most of us here will show up at the city council meeting. and oppose the zoning request of the PZD because it opens too many doors in the future that we have no control of once the zoning is acquired. So I think all of us will show up to that city council meeting, and if we all show up, they will table the motion.
Okay, do you have a suggestion for growing?
The gentleman in the, who spoke earlier had a suggestion.
It's to pursue a variance?
And
Well, I have a suggestion that you might reconsider the variance. As far as what you do with this property, it's not up to us to make plans for you, but we do respond to the plans that you make. I'm not a property developer. I know very little about these things. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know how best to utilize this property. That's for you guys to figure out, and you need to come up with a plan that's suitable for this neighborhood.
Yes, and that is exactly what I am hoping to be able to come up with at the end of this. I guess Kathy.
First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for all your work. I do think that we would all be extremely naive if we thought that the way Fayette was growing and what's happening in our city, that this would not be prime property to be developed. And I think it would happen. People will make it happen. So what we have to do as a group is to figure out a way to have, I'm not gonna, we all have heard the word endowment a million times, but something has to happen like that in order to save it for the future. I think we would all agree that this is the spot that's left in Fayetteville that we love, where we can come and walk and be without that much traffic, and we need to save it. And I'm all in, but I don't think this is the right route to take.
So the change in the zoning of Mount Sequoyah is not the right route?
Well, I think if we open up the zoning, then that's what I'm saying about being naive, about thinking that things will not happen in the future. Because we've opened up the zoning laws, and then one by one, it will fall apart.
Yes, and we're hoping we really do, as Mount Sequoyah, want to find a way to grow the income streams.
Yes.
That's why I presented some of the things that we have up here as far as individual donations, as far as 40% of our income comes from outside groups. And so wanting to find a way to make sure we preserve that and grow and diversify that. Because what we also don't want is to sit back and, like in 2008 when there was the recession, we were waiting for hotel bookings to come through, the overnight lodging, and people were like, oh, we can't. The economy has changed so much that we need to stay home. And so Mount Sequoyah was, again, at that point, we're like, what do we do? So that's why we're trying to diversify some of the things that we offer, because we want to see that sustainability. Just like you would with your investment portfolio, we want to do with our activities. Sorry, I have no idea who raised their hand first, so I'm just gonna...
So I just want to say that this isn't an us and them thing. This is, I think everybody in this room wants Mount Sequoyah to be successful. And I was at the meeting on Monday and I saw that there too. We all want you guys to be successful. But I just went through a thing with the planning commission on some townhouses on Fletcher, and that got rezoned. And once that was rezoned, you can go to everybody and they can say, we can't do anything about it now. So what we have to do, and I think that's a trust issue too, because I think we all want this to be good and wonderful, but once somebody gets in there that doesn't care what we want, then that becomes an issue. So somehow, if we work together and figure out a different route for this wonderful place and all your work, we'll be okay. So.
I'm Andrew Hicks, and I live at 100 North Skyline. I've been here for about 3 years, and but I grew up here in Fayetteville, so I've been aware of this place and have visited ever since I was a small child. So I have a lot of vested interest in it. And I'm not against, in particular, any of the ideas, maybe a couple of them, but, you know, most of the ideas I think are fine as far as development is concerned. But I think that in its present form, the PZD as it's been submitted, I am against it. But I think that the city allows for us to be able to change that as we move forward. And if we can all contribute and have some degree of confidence in its outcome, then I think we can make this thing happen correctly. And some of the ideas that I think can work that would stop things like at Fletcher are density requirements. In other words, you have only so much of the land area can actually be built on. Right now, apparently, I think, Chris, you did a study that said about 2.7 acres, 10% is roughly housing or buildings right now.
Currently building footprint's about 10% of the total 27.
Okay. So if that were to be at least maintained, or perhaps increase somewhat, but maybe pick a number, you know, say don't go over, leave 80% open space everywhere. That would allow for some development that would produce some more income for the place. But I think those kind of restrictions put into this PZD from what it is right now would be the thing that would make the difference. And there are many other things that we can do too. That's just one example. The other thing is that if we could all contribute to the support of this up here, I think that would be significant. I don't know how many people are, you know, it's a voluntary thing. Cynthia and I belong to the clubhouse, so that's what we've been doing so far, but we're considering adding more to that. So I think that's something that would help.
And it is tax deductible.
Yeah, and give us a voice in this up here. So anyway, and another idea might be an improvement district. That's a whole nother idea, but that's something that could be considered in the future. It's where you create a tax base by all the people that live around it that are added to their property taxes, and that money goes for the upkeep of it here. That'd be another possibility.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. John Ray. I live on Vincent Avenue, halfway up the mountain. And we walk up here, and I agree with the lady that said that I think everybody here wants Mount Sequoyah to thrive and of course, survive. The PZD, as it exists now, doesn't account for a lot of things. One is the roadways coming up to the area, and I know, you know, the city has to do that. You can't do that, but right now, with the addition of the gym here on Mount Sequoyah, there's a safety issue already. A lot of people walk or bike up Assembly or Texas Way, and the speed that the cars are moving and the lack of walkways, there's already a safety issue. So if we increase traffic, that's going to make that a much bigger issue over time. Certainly, it seems that with the PZD, perhaps some things could be either eliminated or minimized, like, you know, talking about hotels and motels and clustered housing or whatever that was. Drive-through restaurants, things like that. But, you know, obviously you need to make the money to be able to continue. But there needs to be these kinds of restrictions to keep the place what it is, what makes it wonderful now, and why most of us live up here.
Yes, thank you so much. Sorry you had your hand raised for a long time.
I'm Bob Ford. I live at 785 Missouri Way, just over the hill. My wife would kill me for saying this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I met my wife in 1994 in that building, working on a new play. She was the lead in my play. So we have a deep connection to this place. I'm a contributor. And yeah, we're all here because we all just, this is a very, I don't know of any place that like this that exists. And how lucky are we to live within walking distance of this place? It's just amazing. So thank you for everything you're doing, and to the board members, and for being a 501c3. Specific question for me, and I think what's happened is that we are just all alarmed as hell by what was outlined on the PZD. So I have two questions. One is that like boilerplate, or where did that come from? Specifically, something like, this is what really got me, a 5-story hotel on each of the 5 quadrants.
With no setback.
With no setback. So that specific kind of thing was the big lean-in moment for us. And actually, I'd love to know how that happened, because I think that would then be repeated in some of the other questions, like, oh, would you really need something like that on each of the 5 quadrants? And then it sounds like, the way you're framing, it sounds like you're considering a rewrite of the PZD and a reconception, and that makes me feel really good. And we would love to see that when it's done. But yeah, so where did the idea for the hotels?
Yes. So the 5-story building and the hotel use unit are 2 totally separate things. When I was writing, I realized that when the zoning is done, that a 5-story hotel could be built because of the way we've zoned it. This is the building that is currently 4 stories. And I would love the opportunity that if we had a rooftop deck, if that was ever a possibility based on engineering structures and things, that's why I put the 5th story. It was not supposed to be on every single planning area. It was on 2, and the other ones had maximums of 3 stories, and there was a total accident that the 5th story was on planning area 4. That was something that I was writing through, and I did not intend for the 5-story hotel to be on every single planning area. But again, with the building, we're trying to protect this historic building to make sure that it is allowed to then be on our site according to our zone, because if we don't write it with 5 stories, then I don't think we would have to take it down, but I don't want that to come into question when we start renovating it or when we start using it, then to say, oh, well, you're not zoned, so you can't use the top 2 floors. Like, that would be a tragedy. And then the hotel, motel, and amusement service use unit is for those cottages that are scattered throughout the property. And so there's some over there are some over by the pool, there's just the 2 units over by the pool, and then also the 1 house on the very corner. And then same thing with over here by our maintenance area, there's a couple of staff homes that have been used for short-term rentals in the past. So that's why the hotel is on so many different of the planning areas. And yes, we do want to rewrite the PZD based on the feedback that we're getting here.
I'll be really quick. Has the city expressly forbid you from just doing piecemeal ZPDs as you need them? I hear that they have suggested that you give a big thing instead of individual requests. Have they expressly forbid you from doing that?
They don't forbid you from doing any type of submission or application.
Okay.
It's just, we need to write the right thing that makes sense for everybody and do it correctly.
What I hear from
Because you can't-
the neighbors when we're talking on Monday and talking here is this overwhelming thing has so many new things in it. It's just overwhelming, okay? And the thought of where that could go is overwhelming. Everybody here is, okay, you want to put a coffee shop in, well, like, that's great. You want to remodel that building, that's great. So when you want to remodel that building, petition the city for specifically remodeling that building.
Yeah.
And we'll be like, great.
Yeah.
And we can talk about that. This is like a non-starter. So if there's too much in here, like, people see what's wrong, and we're all like, everything.
Yeah, we heard that.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be rewritten, and then we'll show it back to you.
Yeah, all right.
My name is Tom Kelly. I'm a counselor in Dogwood. This place has changed since I was in high school cleaning dishes back there. But I'm kind of confused, and I want to echo a little bit of what Gemma said, is can you tell us what are some of your specific plans? Because I get the impression this is give us permits so we can figure out what we want to do. I think a lot of us would be behind more specific projects and things like that. So if we whittled it down and told us, hey, this is what we think we're going to do, this is the benefits for everybody, these are the problems and concerns, and this is how we will address them, I think we can come to a consensus a lot quicker than just the current proposal.
Good. Thank you. I'm Jerry Jansen. I live on Lighton Trail, but my property backs up against Texas Way, so I'm an adjacent property owner. I have a question for you, Emily. You can't be unaware that there is a substantial reservoir of opposition to the proposal in this crowd. What would be your willingness to let some of us participate as you refashion this proposal? Join you and your staff. Would that be an acceptable idea in your mind?
I think that we would like to, once we're done with this and are rewriting, to send out what the next proposed plan is, based on the edits that we're getting. So I do hope that while we're not forming a specific committee, we do want significant feedback from everyone that is here. And does that kind of answer your question? I'm trying to hit deadlines, and I recognize that not all of you work for Mount Sequoyah. So I would like to be able to take the time and work on it and make sure that I'm able to just work on it and then send it out for feedback, instead of waiting to do a committee, because if we do that, then we're gonna have to totally table it and not make any sort of deadline or revision with any of the city timelines.
I don't see how the logistics of that will all play out, but I think there's a sufficient number of people here who have some pretty good ideas about how this proposal that you're making could be more focused, more specific, and more appealing to the crowd, so to speak, to the people of Fayetteville.
That's what we want to hear. Yes.
It's not just us that are, I think the whole city would kind of feel this way if it were put out to people in the city. Is that it's not just our spot or your spot, it's everyone's spot.
We're just the only ones that know about it.
Well, I think that if people knew about it in the city, there would be a loud outcry also, because it's our only place left in some way. So we need to protect it.
Yeah, and while I do want to make sure we get community feedback, yes, oh, absolutely, and I do want community feedback. I do know that, like, at the city level, they've done some strategic plan sessions, they've done community outreach, community feedback. I think those cost anywhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to run in a way that gets the word out, that gets all of the right people, that puts the plans together in the right place. It's a strategic planning process. Is that about right on the cost of a strategic?
Emily, I'm not really saying to put it out in the city. I'm just saying if people in our city knew about this, it would be like this in a way. You know, people would be unhappy about it and be very sad and wish, oh, what can I do about that? That seems like where if we figure out the zoning in the coffee shop, you know, then we can go to, let's figure out how we can sustain this and in a larger way with the city and the people that live here. I think that that is a possibility. I'm sure we all know that there are a lot of things in this whole area that get funded heavily. And so we just have to figure out how to make that happen. I know that might sound Pollyanna-ish, but, you know, I don't think so.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I'm trying to pass the mic to you. I don't want to respond to everything.
My name is John Dupree. I live at 1020 East Dogwood. And if you would, and folks on your team, would take the trouble to read the specifics of the Board of Adjustments variance policy, you will find is designed exactly to do what you want to do here, piecemeal by piecemeal, which is what we would like. And whoever told you that the city that's not appropriate, I don't believe that's correct. It's exactly what you need to address individual building issues here from a zoning standpoint, one at a time, which is what I think we would like to see here. We support some of those individual issues, but we're not prepared to support the whole thing. It's as simple as that.
I'm Dean Cooney. I live next bitch down to the south here, and everybody here in this state of the world wants Mount Sequoyah to succeed and thrive. We all want that. The issue is planning, and like instead of the idea of a group rewriting this PZD and bringing it back for a proposal, if it gets voted down at the city, it takes 1 year before you can bring it back to the council. If it's tabled and you get to take your time to kind of revamp it, that'd be the best possible world. But the thing I would suggest, and I've spoken to some other folks about this before, is that the Walton Family Foundation is very generous to help fund nonprofits for a plan to not only satisfy the long-term needs, but also develop a plan for evolution to where they want to achieve their goals in such a way that can be mostly more creative and more wonderful than what you or we would have come up with on our own. So I would suggest making a serious run at the Walton Family Foundation. We had an issue here. They know this. They know this. They know this is great. I suspect, as John has experienced before, they would come in and help design basically what it is you're trying to do, and design in such a way that the people here would be very supportive instead of oppositional. And if you go to the city council with a plan that this group gets behind, you've got it like that. So I would suggest you take that tack, and if you would be so inclined. I said John and Bob back over there.
Anyone else back in this corner?
Okay, good job, Emily. I mean, this is a difficult crowd to manage. I've lived on Skyline Drive, been living there for 9 years. I went to college here, been coming up here for 20 plus years and raising my family right across the street. I like the way this is. I would like to see it become better. It takes money to become better and even to maintain. And I know that you're up against, trying to raise money and, donations and grants and income from rental properties. I would suggest that if it's going to be rewritten, variances, percentages, a total scrap and from the ground up, maybe while people are in the room, poll the audience a little bit before you go off in another direction. We have another meeting like this 3 weeks from now and it gets shot down again. Would anybody in this room, if it was literally just a coffee shop right over there, be opposed to that? No. Okay, there we go. Me either. I think that would be great. Does Andrew's plan of inserting percentages and restrictions to a PZD like this that is more global rather than piecemeal, is that more popular or unpopular? Agreed. I'd like to see it, yeah, but before she rewrites it in that direction, is that the wrong direction?
Yes. Yes.
Show of hands? Restrictions?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm not the judge and executioner here. I just think that we've got a crowd and the show of hands can help you save some time.
A reason, and I might be wrong, but that's why I think it's not a good idea. Because if we look around us, we all know there are lots down there are lots over there are empty lots up there. Those, what will happen is people live up here, then they will say, oh, well, look what's happening at Sequoyah, we're just gonna sell our lot, which they have held as kind of a, it's like a ground lot for them up here. And so those places will start falling. And I think that may well happen anyway. But if we start doing it here first, and people see that we don't care here, that we'll just build houses here, and other things here, and things happen, then I think that is a real possibility.
I don't disagree. I agree with you. I'd like to
The
see
way things are going.
it stay more like it is than wildly different. However, I don't want to see it flounder as is until it dies. You know? And I think that if we restrict everything, we're going to see it die, and then we have no control over anything that the future has to hold here. So I think we can come together and take an opportunity here to devise a slightly new pathway or an entirely new pathway, because before Emily works on it anymore, let's try to help her pick a direction while we're together.
Hi, I'm Nan Kenway, and I live on Missouri Way also. And, you know, I'd like to address the idea that you want to rezone everything instead of asking for variances piecemeal. You know, and I think can you hear me? Okay. No. Oops, sorry. I'd like to address the idea that you wanted to rezone everything globally, instead of asking for variances for each different project. And the assurance you gave that that would not be immediately greenlit by the city is that you would have to go through plumbing or water or whatever. But we would have no control over those processes. We would no longer have any control over those. And so I think that's the opposition that you're sensing, is that we understand that once we, as someone said about, that lady said about what's going on in Fletcher, is that, yeah, people have seen it happen recently. And so that is a lot of the opposition you're feeling. Thank you.
Robert Busick, I live on Skyline. First off, fully support what you guys have been doing here. I understand it's one of those where you have to grow to survive, or you're going to die on the vine here. I think everybody in the room can support what you're talking about, but I would agree also, I'd like to see the city say no to a variance before going down the route of rezoning. Because while everybody in this room can trust what you're saying right now, there's nothing currently written to where, you know, Mount Sequoyah Center Inc. can't do a 99-year land lease and a developer wipes it and does what the zoning then allows. Can't sell the property, but there's nothing that says that they can't lease the property. And so if it's gonna go down the route of PZD, having restrictions in like Andrew talked about, I think the 80% thing makes sense. I'd probably add to it and go cubic volume instead of just roof line square footage, where you can't take the 1 story and put the 5-story back. But yes, I mean, I think we need to get to your bullet point on common ground and figure out what can work so this place can survive and grow while also addressing the unknown future concerns that the whole room has.
Just to speak to that, I think we've already heard a lot of, prior to this meeting, we've heard from a lot of people with really great ideas. And by the way, I live 2 houses north of the cross, but I'm also on the board. So you should know that I have a vested interest in like this happening correctly. And we've heard some great ideas from other neighbors and other thinkers. We're going to be rewriting the entire thing, probably from the ground up. We love the idea of some of the restrictions on open space, buffers, setbacks, all of that stuff coming in. And you know, sometimes it just takes a meeting like this to get everybody to pay attention. My God, I've never seen any of my neighbors in a room like this. Next, we're going to tackle sidewalks because assembly is horrible. But we also
Yes, I asked them at least what's the order about
get on the
sidewalks.
same page. And so the city actually hears us because we've tried to get on further up the list on sidewalks. But that's another time. What's that?
We'll help, for sure.
Yes, we have to.
Emily,
It's horrible. But yes.
It's me. Okay. So, yes, I realize.
Who are you? And why?
We're at Greenmount. Okay. And we live on Skyline 100. So I talked to Emily, the city, Chris, everybody. And at first I didn't understand why they just went this huge PZD. And what happened was, and I think it's too broad, covers every inch of the property, doing whatever they want. And I think they did that, I finally understood, because that's kind of how it's being used now, and they want to cover what they're doing now so that it's legal and not have to cease what they're doing and stay under the code. So, but what I think, so it's going to be complicated, but I think when Chris rewrites it, and we had planned to help him, and I think there's 5 architects on this circle, and so there's lots of experience, that that somehow we're going to have to locate where these different facilities are allowed on the site, which probably would be closer to the center and away from the perimeter so that it remains park-like, and phase into that somehow. And I understand from the city that a PCD is very specific, and that you can even say what the buildings need to look like, and all the volume, and ground cover, and open space, and so you can get a lot more specific. And I haven't seen the Markham Hill PCD, but I think it, from what they said at the city, it was very specific. So I think it's just going to take a lot more work, and I think, you know, Chris is real capable, and then of course we have lots of people here to work on it. So I think we should give him another chance and just begin to talk about it.
One more quick thing. Someone said that when this is passed, that there's no opportunity for further review, and that is not actually accurate. Anytime somebody actually decides to put a building or any change in a building, it would have to go through some kind of review process, and if it's a new building, it would have to be what's called a site plan review. So it would go back down to the city. There would be time at that point to comment on it, oppose it, if you will. All that can still happen.
I just want to say that, yes, there is that opportunity, because the legal options in this room are much more limited than they are.
That is correct. So we have to be careful, you know, as we move ahead. But yes.
I'm Doris Engineer. I'm at 935 Texas Way. I'm Buddy the Black Cat.
Not a friend of pitbull.
So I've got a couple of questions. Number one, why are you concerned about the zoning being correct for that building? It would be grandfathered in. They're not going to make you knock that building down because there exists, right? Right.
Well, what they would do is make you move people out. In other words, they might, if someone somewhere else decided to bring issue against this, they would say, you can't tear the building down, but you can't operate it, is what they would say.
But is that imminent, because the city has threatening North Sequoyah?
No.
And the second thing, you gave us the impression that the existing PZD is to protect the buildings, the use of today, right? But you're proposing building on the strip between Skyline and Texas Way, and there are no buildings today. And I voiced this the other day, the drainage from any kind of building you do up here affects everybody down here.
Sorry.
One last thing. Back to the Walton Foundation. I saw maybe it was a year ago, a plan for putting a bike trail in on part of the Mount Sequoyah property. What happened to that? I mean, was that?
I can answer that.
Yeah, so the trail was from the Trailblazers, and I have regularly emailed them saying, when can we talk more about this? And they stopped emailing me back. So I don't know if they lost funding or if they lost interest, but that's where that is. I do have another meeting set up with Progressive Trail Design to see if we can get any sort of site plan for trails on Mount Sequoyah. What would that take? How much money would it take? Who could do it? How could we feasibly do it? Sorry, I'm talking really fast again. But yes, I have not lost hope that we can add trails on Mount Sequoyah around here, so you don't have to walk on Skyline. You can walk on our property instead. The Trailblazers just stopped emailing me back, and there's a whole other conversation that hasn't happened yet. And as far as that, we will add that note on the notes from today about that specific section of property. We don't have any plans, we have not, I don't even know if it's possible to build on that. Or if there's no funding for it, there's no design plan, there's no,
Yeah, and so we didn't understand why we would even propose it.
yeah, we can make the notes on that planning area 6 that she is referring to.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. I think my microphone's died. Sorry. The microphone has died.
You might have just turned it off. I think you heard.
Okay.
The Bob Culp, I live down on Missouri Way, right across from Bob Ford. And a number of folks have been talking around it, and I'm reading on Monday night, somebody mentioned this, that one of the possibilities that might make sense is to go back and redo the PZD very clearly, spelling out the existing facilities and what they are, so that people know what they are. And then, instead of being so global and long range, look to 5 to 10 years in the future and what might make sense, what might you be able to accomplish in, say, the next 5 to 10 years if everything works the way you want it. Include those things on top of it, with the idea that if you're successful with all of those things in 5 years and you're ready to go forward, you're going to have enough money to go back to the city and ask for a change. But that's going to be a much smaller package. And I think it's going to focus on, like you mentioned, perhaps putting a roof deck on that building. That could be something that's in the plan. The coffee shop, definitely in the plan. The existing uses you have around here today that may or may not be already non-conforming, make sure that they're the way they need to be. And I think that would be a much smaller thing. And the only other thing, Jerry's left already, I would never give up the opportunity of getting Jerry to work on it if he wants to.
Yeah. I have his, I should have his email.
Yeah, get a free civil engineering.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
My name is Jeff Shannon. I'm professor of architecture at Clay Jones School. And I'm a little bit confused. Are y'all still proposing the March 1st proposal?
Sorry, that's when I submitted it. And
Yes, that's the full deal.
And then I can submit edits to the city. So what we would do is then I would change the date on the next proposal to the city, so that it would then be updated on the city's website. Oh, thank you. The city's website, it'll be updated. I'm planning, when we do have an update, to email everyone who's here directly and everyone else that's on our email system, so that you can see exactly which edit and which version. That's why I put a date on there, is so that you can see when we're making changes and edits to it.
The answer is no. It's going to be changed completely.
Okay, well, I want to compliment you on your planning firm. I know these guys from the architecture school, and they represent a great firm, Modus Architects, so I compliment you on selecting them. But I promise you, all these folks will show up at the city council meeting and will not approve a PZD. I promise you that. They better find another way to do it, and we'll support another way that falls short of the PZD.
So are you suggesting we look at some existing zones that are already in existence with the city, like a community services zone, or there are, I don't know how many different zones there are on the city's website.
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just saying you will run into severe opposition for a PZD zoning change.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, and I'm trying to take from that what we can do for next step for Mount Sequoyah to help with.
I think she's looking for solution.
Can you just withdraw the program and start from scratch?
So that's essentially what we're doing. Since we're not going to be on the agenda, we're not on the agenda for the April 10th deadline. It's not going to be the April 24th, and that's not the city council meeting. That is the planning commission. It has to be approved by the planning commission before it can go to city council. So we will be submitting before I pick up signs from before I do all the things with city council or with the planning commission. that we are sending a totally edited and updated plan to them for consideration on their April 24th meeting.
Is the April 24th meeting, is that a special meeting or is that a standard?
It's a standard meeting. Yeah, they just have them. They have them every regular intervals, and so it's like if you don't make the 10th, then they bump it to the 24th. If I don't get it in on time, say it takes us longer to get these edits done. If we're not happy with the process, we'll get moved back even further. And so basically, when you go to Planning Commission, that determines when it will be heard by City Council if they approve it. Because Planning Commission could also have edits or table it for discussion. Go back here.
Back there.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So are you putting this PZ together by yourself, or are you accessing talent on your board?
I do have help with talent on the board. I have a couple other staff members who have been helping me sort through.
So, but you don't have any background in it?
We don't have a paid company that we are paying to help us do this. It is all staff time or volunteer time at this time. I have applied for a grant with the Walton Family Foundation, but it is they're only selecting 3 entities in Northwest Arkansas out of at least 40 or 50 applications, and it's specifically for one site. We can't do the whole property. I already tried that.
But I mean, that's a real technical process.
Yes.
And I think it's too much for you to try to do on your own.
So, can you go over the map and just explain, when we talk about towers versus what our buildings currently represent?
So this is a map of our existing usage, color coordinated, and just to give you an idea of why the PZD is what we were looking at. So you can see everything that's in pink is an event space, so something that we rent out to different groups to do things like weddings, to do things like birthday parties, and things like that. The things in green are typically used for lodging. A few of the houses, they have been used in the past for lodging, are actually art spaces right now. I wasn't able to color. I don't have the skill to color it, so I hadn't gotten it to Chris yet. So sorry. So Helen, I'm not trying to give away your studio, make it lodging. And then the spaces that have half and half, so this is part lodging and part meeting space. You can see this is a long-term lease. That's where Clubhouse is. We have a couple of art studios in there as well. This building on the corner is rented to a private individual as a home. Let's see, we also have the tennis courts and things on here as well, but you can see all the different colors are all over the map. This one is also used not just for event space, this one is used not just for event space, but also for art studios. So this is just to give you an idea of what the existing things are on our campus. So we have overnight lodging, which is gonna be the hotel, motel, amusement services. That's why we applied for that use unit, as well as the short-term lodging. We also have meeting and event space. We do anything from concerts to festivals to conferences in these spaces, so they are very much wide in range. And I mean, it's everything from, I've got an addiction conference where we've got health professionals that are trying to learn more about that, to we have a music festival happening in May that we're hoping to put on. And again, we've moved some things, like the Martin building used to be rented out on an individual basis. That's this one right here. Used to be rented out. There were 10 classrooms and a chapel, and it just wasn't used. There was so much space, it wasn't used on a regular basis. And so during the pandemic, we worked with Clubhouse to say, could we reimagine this space? And that's why there is the gym up there. So we're getting consistent usage for the space. We're starting to see that income come in and help sustain the operations of Mount Sequoyah, to help pay for things like utilities, to help get us to a place where we can hire some new staff. The fact that we're hiring 2 new staff is amazing. Like, we're thrilled, and we still have more room to go. But that's why we're looking to move to some of those long-term. We also have to be careful of square footage. We have to be careful of uses.
If we were to leave this at the current P1 zone, that's what I'm hearing. Don't make any change and leave this at P1. Is that a viable option? And what uses can go into a P1?
P1 is arts and recreation, is one of the use units that's in there, which protects a lot of the art studios. It protects the use of the gym and the swimming pool and the tennis courts and things like that. We also, I think that there's a conditional use for hotel, motel services. And that's been something we've been able to function under, but the city recommended moving it to preferred use for long-term if we are changing things. If we were to maintain a P1 designation, I think to make it work, we would have to substantially increase the amount of individual donations that we're getting, or find some sort of way to get funding from the city, whether it's what Andrew mentioned about, that's the way P1 institutions, if you look at them, it's Washington Regional, it's the University of Arkansas, it's Parks and Recreation, so Wilson Park, and things of that nature. And it was Mount Sequoyah because we were being funded by the United Methodist Church.
So potentially we could lose uses. And we go back to your earlier slide that you looked at where we make budget now. If we lose any uses, we don't make budget. So if we remain at a P1, then your concerns about Mount Sequoyah not remaining Mount Sequoyah, you're actually contributing to Mount Sequoyah not being here.
Is there any current threat right now to any of these?
No. So what we're trying to do, what we're saying here,
This is a misrepresentation.
okay, well, I'm saying, that's what I want to understand. Can we stay as P1 and continue the uses that we have? That's the question. And if not, then what measures do we need to put in place so that we don't lose the uses that we have?
Is anyone threatening?
No one's threatening.
Uses of these properties? I don't think so.
Until someone complains or something happens, but we don't know.
It hasn't happened for how long?
Well, we only moved away from the Methodist Church.
Since 2016.
So in the last 7 or 8 years.
So you can use the properties that are already here for the current uses. Fine.
Right, exactly.
Nobody's suggesting.
That's what I want to understand.
Nobody's suggesting that. There have been a number of suggestions about a viable way to proceed.
Yeah, but I guess the question was, if we're P1, if we're going to change zoning or address this, clean it up, how do we do that? That's the question.
Well, I don't think people were really listening to what people were saying then, because what people were saying was, yes, present the idea for the coffee shop, move ahead with that, absolutely. But this entire global rezoning where it could potentially lead to a real problem on the mountain.
Can you present us with?
Let's craft it that we cover the uses in a conservative, respectful manner and clean this up. That's what we're agreeing. We all agree. It's just that keeping it as a P1 as is probably is not the most viable method. We're going to have to modify something.
With variances.
Yes.
Right.
Or something, or more defined.
Up here.
Yeah, Emily, can you give all of us the evidence that you have that says this cannot be approached piecewise by the city?
I will get confirmation via email and text so that we can copy and screenshot. And yes.
Until we see that, everyone, not everyone of course, but a lot of us are going to be going, just present piecewise what you need, and we can evaluate that one at a time.
Yeah.
Because frankly, I think a lot of us don't believe that you can't do that.
Yeah, and it was in a conversation one-on-one, not one-on-one, it was with a group of people where I sat down with Jesse Masters at the city to have that conversation, so it's not in writing. So I can get it in writing, yes, Steve.
I just kind of want
We do have plans for Photoshop. They're beautiful pictures, they're great.
But I thought it might be easy. I called, and I just want to also say to, in defense of Emily and the board, that's the first thing they told me. And I guess because they've already come back to the city multiple times for things that they want to do, the planning department, I don't know if they were worn out or what they were like, it's not institutional anymore, it's this. They need to come up with another way to once and for all. So she's exactly right in that, I mean, the city's pretty infamously hard to get things started. It starts with a no and you find your way there. But but at the same time, they supported that they wanted all these things to happen, just find the right vehicle. And I don't know what happened from there because I don't work for Mount Sequoyah, I'm a tenant. or a contractor running the health and wellness up here. And they've been wonderful for me. I'm in business still because of Mount Sequoyah, so this is just a godsend for our family. But just to say that is how this whole thing started, literally over a tiny coffee shop. I agree, because I didn't understand. I'm the one that I first started arguing all these other institutional places that get to have a Starbucks in them and all these other things that seem to be okay if you're of a certain size in this city. I guess you have enough power and money to get past that. So there obviously is a way those other places get to do them, but Mount Sequoyah has obviously not got the power at this point to do that. But anyway,
these days you may want to avoid Starbucks.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're not doing a Starbucks.
Not doing a
to be clear.
Starbucks.
We're not doing a Starbucks, and also not the use unit for drive-through restaurants. That is not, to my knowledge, in the use units.
I just want to second what Stuart said, and I've been up to his place several times, not enough, but he's put, I think, his own money into improving all that over there. And when I walk by these other places, the cottages and things, I wonder who is paying to upkeep those so that they can be maintained to a level that they can get the rents that they need to be able to keep all that running. If that's not done, then they decline in value, and people don't rent them, and it's harder and harder to keep it going. And if you could, Emily, you might speak to that a little bit. Like, how do you measure the strength of a nonprofit?
How do you measure the strength of a nonprofit? So you look at the finances. You look at right now what we've been working towards is to become on an operational level. So when at the end of the year, for net operations, we want to look to see that we are in the black and not in the red. And we have gotten to that point over the last, I think, 4 years. We have consistently been operationally in the black, which means we're able to put money back into the buildings. It does not cover, we are currently not covering our depreciation expense. So after depreciation expense, which is that aging of the buildings, we're still not at that point where we're covering that at this time. So that's why we're having some of these conversations of trying to grow revenue, trying to be creative and think about things. Also, the health of a healthy nonprofit is that you're doing your mission as well, and you're not trying to collaborate with. We're not trying to home homeless people, because that is not part of Mount Sequoiah's mission. We're not trying to have mission creep and say, well, that's a wonderful thing. We're not a food bank. We're not things. While those are all wonderful things, those are not what Mount Sequoyah is doing. And so I'm trying to evaluate the different things. And that's part of why we have Stu up here, is because it's not just a gym that he runs, it's a community. He wants to know his members. He wants to make sure members are coming to the center. And while it is a fitness center, it still fits well within what we do as Mount Sequoyah, as a community center.
Would you comment briefly about the live music venues scattered throughout the whole plan?
Yes, that's something that we are already doing. During COVID, we started Music on the Mountain back. We had some socially distanced circles in Cottage Circle where we had local musicians. We paid to perform. People could bring their own meals. They could bring drinks and things and enjoy a concert and come up and do something at Mount Sequoyah. We applied for outdoor music variants or use units for the outdoor chapel because of weddings. We wanted to make sure live music could be performed at weddings. Someone was getting married. Let's see, we have an indoor venue that we'd like to be able to open the windows and have music playing on the lawn on this side of campus, and then also be able to play music at the pool, which is why it's at that one, the cross overlook. I have some beautiful photos of the concert they did in the past with a grand piano. They brought in the grand piano and had someone playing at sunset. So that's why I've included it for that area. We'd love to activate that so that we're, again, slowing traffic, discouraging parking at the overlook in the street so that it's in people's way. And we found that the best way to do that is to keep it busy with us doing things as a staff. So that's why the outdoor music. And I think we can put in some restrictions for when concerts can be performed, how loud they need to be, that they need to follow city noise ordinances and things of that nature.
Kit Williams suggested that the north side of your property would particularly suffer from outdoor music. Can you comment on that?
Because of the north side of the property is over here. I think the west side is what Pitt was talking about. I saw west is that way. because we've trimmed the trees so that we can maintain the view. And so I think that was his concern. It's not our plan to do significant amplified music, and it would be, if we are like putting a microphone or something to a singer, it would be pointing back towards Mount Sequoyah. And again, we would put in restrictions. We can write those into as far as times. Maybe even, I don't know if we can write the type of style of music, but we can do our best to make sure that it is fitting and not a nuisance to the neighbors, because I don't want outdoor music to be a nuisance to the neighbors. I want it to be something that folks enjoy, and while you may hear it for a little while, you're not hearing it at 1 a.m.
The sound doesn't travel that far in my experience. So it just stays within the circle.
Yes, I think that there is an entity on, like, that's not Mount Sequoyah that has had some neighbor complaints in the past for noise. So that is something we want to learn from. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to speak to the P1 zoning question. I did look that up, and I don't remember specifically what the use units that are allowed, but there's also conditional use units that are allowed, and it mentioned commercial, and I couldn't find in the code what specifically it means by commercial, but coffee shop seems commercial to me.
I would love for that to be the case. The city was very strong in saying, no, the current zone does not allow for.
Look up the city code and go to the P1 and see what's allowed. And use units and look those up, and then you'll know.
Yes, they were very clear. Coffee shop was not allowed.
So it's not commercial.
I would like to know, in 8 years, in 2031, you don't have to split any of the proceeds of sale of property with the Methodist Church. But earlier, you can't sell it to a developer, you have to sell it to a 501(c)(3). Is that correct?
That's what she said.
Correct. If Mount Sequoyah were to look at divesting, and the board was to say we don't want to be Mount Sequoyah anymore, I believe the way that it works, and I don't know this for sure because I know Mount Sequoyah used to have 400 acres, and when the city gifted that 400 acres, part of the design of it was to be able to divide up, so a lot of people who live on Skyline Drive and surrounding areas, people before you bought property from Mount Sequoyah. So I don't know how, I'm still learning the exact specifications, so I cannot speak to this legally, but according to the foundation group that I looked at, nonprofits, if they are looking at divesting, need to then transfer ownership like the Methodist Church did to Mount Sequoyah. I believe that is the model in which, if they were wanting to get, like the Methodist Church wanted to get rid of the costs, wanted to get rid of everything, they did not sell it. I think it's because they needed to do this process.
Well, and would you be willing to commit to the neighbors, if you intend to sell property, would you give us first right of refusal?
I don't think she just said that.
We can definitely look into that.
Yeah, please.
I will do some research on that, Kim, and give me some time, because I want to focus on this first. But give me some time on that. I know at one point that also the Mount Sequoyah Woods Trail was sold to the city. And so I don't know the legality of things.
That keeps it from being the cluster dwelling with the 3 stories, the 2 stories, the 10 feet apart, the 0 setback, if it goes through as is, as written.
Yeah, my research has not been in this because my focus has been trying to keep Mount Sequoyah, Mount Sequoyah. I want to be here for another 20, 30, as long as I can work here, I would like to work here. That is my goal, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think that point about the ability to resell to a commercial group or another 501c3 is extremely important to all of us. So if you could provide any legal basis for that statement, I think it would be very comfortable.
Yes, in my preparation for the meeting today, I had been asked that question a number of times, and so I was like, you know what? I need to do some research into that to provide some security and to do this. So I still have more research to do, especially with Lee. I did have the lawyer who's on the board look at the statement, and he said that it is accurate, but he is not a realtor, he's not in real estate law, so I want to make sure that we get someone who's a specialist.
Okay, are you saying 2 different things, that you can't sell the entity, but you can sell property on, right? You're saying, at one point you're saying you can sell property.
And that's my that's my lack of knowledge. I need to do some more research. I don't want to speak to that without.
What's the difference between selling the property?
They're selling assets.
Selling the entity.
Yes.
Yeah.
But assets are specifically tied and donations have gone into investing in assets. And so I am not an expert, I don't want to speak to that, so please do not, Stacy, please do not quote me on that. Just kind of.
Just one more thing, I think that if we could keep the planning the way, zoning the way it is, and we could get conditional use for a coffee shop, I think this group would be right there at the planning commission saying that's what we want, and that makes a big difference.
It does, that's the planning commission has said.
We're behind you, even if they say no, we're behind you.
Yes.
We can cut.
But if they tell you no on a piecewise approach, and there's no legal standing for that, I bet you everybody in this room will show up
Yes,
there
exactly.
and tell them, you can't tell them no about it.
Yeah, and one of the things that we're working on is that while cities don't turn over staff quickly, that can happen. I know that people with liquor permits experience this all the time, that the law can be read in different ways. And so our work in this is that no matter who is at the city, it's very clear that this is clear, it is legal, it is very cut and dry, it's not vague. That's why we're trying to name a lot of these things we're naming, so that if whoever is at the planning commission in 5 years is not gonna say, well, I'm reading it differently and you need to rezone again because you didn't do it the way I think you should have done it. Yes, sir.
I just want to make a real quick clarification too, when it comes to the coffee shop not fitting, and this is just based on my limited conversations that I had with the city. It's not necessarily that a coffee shop, it's that I'm a private operator. And so I'm a contractor. I'm doing the same with health and wellness, but it fits directly into Mount Sequoiah's mission, which is different. I completely disagree with the city on it because Chartwell's entire business model is based upon contracting out food services for hospitals, schools. And so I do think it's a hard-headed move on the city as to why, because it's a great way for Mount Sequoyah, what we're doing over here. I just came up and we did a month-to-month lease. We didn't even know, will this work or will we not? But as you find, as you get the building in good shape and you put equipment, people will come. And we've gone from, 200 members to 400 members, and that's worked. And that's a good strategy if things fit within the concept. A coffee shop does, when somebody asked earlier, that doesn't seem like that makes a significant amount of difference. Here's where it does. I have no social in my gym. You need a place for people to go. My parents have been staying up here because we're Methodist as long as I can remember. And you can't go get a cup of coffee. There's not a place to do anything. So you can't spend $1 up here. The kids could get ice cream if you had so there's actually more reasons for their people would come up here and stay more, and you would see the cabins being more full if there was this extra layer of social. And that's really what this coffee shop started up, as just people got a place to go, then I think everything will do a little better.
Nobody's opposing that.
Oh, I know. I'm just kind of going, when you get into whether a shop is allowed, yes, it's the private operator. And I think I'm the crazy one that'll borrow money to do it. And then there's not a lot of money to just go building coffee shops up here. So that was the little caveat.
Yeah, we're gonna do John and then back to you.
Yeah, thanks. I just request that as the PCD is reworked and or, whatever vehicle you use, that it be made a priority to somehow work with the city on the traffic issues and the sidewalks and, trails or whatever it takes. It used to be that traffic was not an issue except during the camp, and it was easy to deal with that. Now traffic is a daily thing. I like the idea of the gym being up here, but there's a lot more traffic. It's fast traffic. There's a safety issue. As things increase and there are more structures and more people are coming up, it's going to be more of an issue. Somehow or other, there needs to be a provision to be working with the city to make this a priority. I love that what you did with the cross area. However, there were still people stopping there.
This is why I applied for the grant funding with Walton Family Foundation. It's because I was like, oh, there's still parking there. So
is
huge though.
Good, good, I'm so glad. Good. Okay, yes, ma'am.
I live on Skyline. Jane. I love the idea of, it sounds like you need more professional planning. And versus doing it all yourself, I don't know why you just don't allow like the Walton Foundation to do it. And just, instead of rushing into it, I feel like we're really rushing into this. I don't know why, give them 6 months, let them come up with some professional plans and options. That way you can come back to us and say, this is option 1, this is option 2, this is option 3, this is option with this amount of population, this is with this amount of population, this is, more crowded. And I just think that's a much smarter way to do it. And as far as the coffee shop goes, is there any reason we couldn't have a food truck up here with a coffee shop and just try that for a while? And get around some of the city rules, or is that a really stupid idea?
Well, our hope is to be able to invest that money that could be spent on a food truck into the building. We have, for example, the power source for the building we want to do a coffee shop is actually tied to the building next door. So when the building goes out, the power goes out next door. So we have to fix the power going to it. We have to fix, make sure that there's the facilities. So if we did a coffee shop, or if we did a food truck, it would then not mean, it would mean there's not enough funds left over to do all the work that needs to be done.
But would you still have to have the city approval for that? Yeah, they're saying now we can't have city approval for a coffee shop, but would you have to have city approval for a food truck?
The coffee shop is gonna go at that building right over there. It used to be the old bookstore, the Cooksbury building. That's where we'd like to put it. Again, central campus. I'm not sure on the answer of food trucks. I can look into it. I'm not sure. I do not know that answer. Yes.
Can you give another recap of your timeline as it stands today of all the things you're wanting to do? Does that mean that you're going to try to rework a plan by the 24th and get back to people by then and resubmit things?
Yes, and expect before then, because that's when the meeting is. So I don't have a specific line. My goal would be to work on crafting this and have something to everyone by next week, if not sooner. I need to look at the timeline of what the deadlines need to be, and if I don't get it to you until next week, it might need to push the planning commission to the next meeting, and I'll make sure to fill you in.
I would say there's a very good chance that it's gonna take longer than that.
Yeah.
We don't have the answers.
If you don't make the 24th deadline, when is the next one after that?
I believe
2 weeks later.
2 weeks later. Every 2 weeks, they have a planning commission meeting.
Every
Yeah.
2 weeks?
Yeah, they have them every 2 weeks, and then based on whichever planning commission meeting you're on the agenda for, if the planning commission approves it, then they would then send it to city council for approval from city council.
Does that feel like a realistic timeline to you to rework things within a 3-week time to get back and get opinions from people and submit it in the next 3 weeks?
I just said, I think it'll take longer than that.
Okay.
So I would say, right now, we're on the agenda for the 24th, but if we don't get the city or the proposed plans, it would then push further back.
The trick is to ask for it to be tabled, and they'll table it, and they'll just set it on a shelf until you're ready to pull it back out, and then modifications in. Otherwise, you're trying to keep up with this 3-week schedule and jam all this in. I don't think you're gonna make a whole lot more progress than you made tonight. That's just me, but I think that if you table it and really give a chance to rethink this, maybe bring in some folks that are more objective, that aren't neighbors, that aren't board members, that have, there's a lot of invested interest in here. And so I think if some planners came in that looked at what Mount Sequoyah is, what it has to offer, its history, its potential future, they could probably help develop a plan that not only would work great, we would all get completely behind, and Mount Sequoyah might have a brighter future than one that would be jammed together just in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah. The plan has been tabled and will not be added to an agenda until I do all of the proper steps. So if I do not get it, then it will be, again, I'm just putting that we're on the agenda for the 24th, but if I don't get the letters out on time, if I don't get the signs posted on time, if I don't do all of the different steps to notify you all and notify the surrounding community, it gets pushed back again. And that's to protect the communication between, so that you know what's going on, so that it's not like, well, I didn't see the email and now it's being voted on and I had no idea what it was.
This isn't an emergency, I don't suspect. This has been going on for a while, so it should be treated as an emergency. I think some more time needs to be taken to kind of back up rethink, redesign with some objective professional planners that aren't here right now, that can come up with a plan that we would really get behind. And if this crowd gets behind you, it's gonna work. Because not only will it smoothly go through the city, you'll have our support. We'll be up here buying coffee and going to the gym and everything that you need to get done. We'll be here to support you and give you donations that you're not making.
Yeah. All right, I know that we've got a lot of people that are heading out. Please make sure your email is on the registrations back in the back. We will continue to take comments and questions. I just wanted to make sure, please make sure that I have your contact information so I can stay in touch and can reach back out as we have updates and changes.
Chris Faribault sent out an email recently saying there would be no new buildings. Is that still hold?
We have no plans for new buildings at this time. There's no funding plan, there's no designs, there's no things that need to happen to actually build something on campus. None of that has been done, nor have funds even been identified for new structures on the site. If I had that kind of money, it would be going into this building first and foremost. This is my highest dream, my highest ideal of trying to get this like really renovated. That fourth floor would be beautiful with windows again. So that's, if I had some substantial money, that's where I would put it. And I think the board would very much like to see that as well. Yes.
I just want to say for the record, that there is a professional on it. It's Lotus and Chris.
Carl.
But are they working? No, there's people you don't even know, that, I mean, they are professionals, so, I think it's in good hands, it just needs to be, tweaked.
Yes, and Andrew, you sent a wonderful document detailing a lot of things and a lot of good concerns with numbers and that. So thank you for that. I have looked at that and read through it. So thank you.
I'm willing to throw my shoulder into it, so.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I don't, my goal is to not have to wait on the Walton Family Foundation to maybe fund some sort of plan. Because like for the planning project, like I said, they're only giving 3 grants in the whole Northwest Arkansas area, and at least 40 or 50 organizations were represented at the meeting that I went to. So it will be highly competitive. I think we have a good ask, but like I said, it's just for one project.
I
Yes.
just want to reiterate that I don't think there's anyone here that would support land zoning district.
Thank you. All right, I will stick around here, so if you want to ask a question one-on-one or say anything, please let me know. Thank you all for being here. Truly, I do appreciate your